So good morning, everyone. My name is David. I'm part of EU policy. I'm just going to draw super quickly a little bit the basic structure so you have an idea of what this beast of like EU and I don't know, because maybe, I don't know. Do you know the key structures and the way the organization? No? Okay, so is this helpful? Should I do it? Okay. All right, so it will be very diagram style, huh? But let me start with like the three key ingredients for the EU is the parliament, European Parliament, with democratically elected representatives, right? You have the council, which is the heads of state, and you have the commission. So the way that those interact is quite complex. It's not just, things go back and forth, but the main thing is the commission is the executive body. They prepare and propose legislation. It gets voted in the parliament, and there is a lot of discussion back and forth often. And then it needs to be accepted by the council. So there's also a lot of this kind of, in the end, everyone, I mean, in reality, it goes like all directions, I think. So if you open up the commission, you get, it's apparently originally I think it's a French governmental design. You have a lot of what they call DGs, and they had to give it this weird DG, Director General name, which is like, we still have it, but the main reason was if they would choose ministry, it would be confusing with the member states. So they left ministries is on the member state level, and then, okay, we're going to do this weird thing, DG is going to be our own thing. So you have Agri, for example. You have GROW, which is Agri is responsible for. GROW is responsible for growth, economics, SMEs. Then you have Klima, for example, responsible for. Yes, environment. Yeah, regions. Yeah. I mean, and this list goes on and on and on, right? You have Ener, you have Mare, that's my favorite, Mare. You have Santé. Santé is for health, yeah, exactly. So you have a lot of those. I think it's like, you also have a lot of executive agencies and etc. In total, it's like 40 something. They are now, we are also, design team is supporting in a process where it's the first time they are trying to do a real change in the structure, the organizational structure. The last time they succeeded in bringing a change was in the 90s. So they managed, now they tried 3 times to bring a change in the organization, but it never worked. So they're trying again. Now, one of those is DG-JRC, and that stands for Joint Research Center. And if you open up the JRC, you have a lot of directorates. And one of them is Directorate S, and that's Innovation in Science and Policymaking. And in there are 4 units. And one of the units is the EU Policy Lab. And in the EU Policy Lab, you have 3 teams. So one is the design team, foresight, and behavioral insights, the BI team. So yeah, and that's 8, 14, and like 14 or something also. Yeah, and this is 35,000 people, something like that. Okay, voila. One quick thing, if you have a pot of money, just EU budget, super quick. 1/3 right now goes to what? To what goes 1/3 of the money? Does anyone know? Agriculture. So the CAP, Common Agricultural Policy, because agriculture is on an EU level, is organized on an EU level. It's one of the only things which is not on a member state level. So another 1/3 of the EU budget goes to
its own operation.
No. So its own operation. Its own operation is 6% of the budget. Yeah, and it's quite an efficient administration actually. But anyway, 1/3 goes to cohesion policy. So CAP and cohesion policy. Does anyone know that? What that means? So Europe is being divided up in regions, and regions can also be across borders. They are the way they define a region. I don't know exactly the rules, but it has to do with the interconnection, the climate, the economy. But they define the economy of every region, and it gets a score. And basically, the whole thing of the cohesion policy is that money flows from richer regions to poorer regions. That's it. So until the region is like in the green zone, it doesn't receive money anymore, and it starts actually, yeah. So that's, and the rest is Horizon Europe, all of those kind of things, and its own operations, 6%. Voila. Thank you. That's. Thank you. No questions. Marta, you want to introduce the policy lab?
David mentioned that there are just 8 designers. So as you can see, the proportion of the of all the staff of the European Commission, but actually there are more designers that are scattered around the European Commission. They just not necessarily call themselves designers. But if you think about EU Policy Lab, indeed there is like design, foresight, and the BI. There is 8 of us, and actually what we do. We are involved in very different kinds of projects. You mentioned the one that is focused on internal, let's say, structure and maybe redesigning the structure. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, I'm involved in this huge project, intergenerational strategy that is like very strategic, high-level project. But on the other hand, I was involved in food waste prevention project that is, let's say, it was a small-scale, let's say, intervention, no, support of design team to help actually DG Sante to support member states in implementing the recent directive about food waste prevention. And it's like this something that the European Commission is hopefully getting better and better at, that's understanding that developing policy, hopefully even co-designing policy with stakeholders is not enough. Then you need to support member states, how they actually implement these directives, because each, let's say, context is different of each member state. So this project about food waste prevention was an example how these people who create these policies, that actually they want to understand what member states are struggling with when they start to implement them. So yeah, just to show you the really the diverse projects that we are dealing with. We have like also self-initiated projects like Futures Garden, which is like you will mention it. Okay, great. So you will learn about it more. And I guess just to quickly wrap up, because it was supposed to be a quick introduction. So we are really trying to bring these 3 disciplines together. If any, like I heard that there are a lot of service designers. Probably some of you also worked with foresight methods, so there are a lot of overlaps, and we get great support and a lot of knowledge from behavioral insights team. But the truth is that we are still struggling to work well within one project. It's not that easy to actually combine these disciplines. I would like to hear from your experience. Maybe you can learn from you, would be wonderful. So yeah, I guess.
Yeah, thanks, Martin. Thanks a lot.
So if you have questions later.
So this, the Joint Research Center is the independent advisory scientific, provides independent scientific advice to policymakers at all stages of the policy cycle. So yeah, there's over 2,400 scientists working across 6 sites in Europe. So you have like also real physical labs where they test cars or test European products. But yeah, we are in innovation, science, and policy. So we have all of the social scientists are where we are. So which is also a recent thing. They started to figure out we have a lot of the hard scientists, and there's a lot of nuclear scientists, and physicists, and those kind of people. So yeah, now there's space for designers, and soon perhaps also artists, hopefully. So we have been thinking the last months together with an agency called LiveWorks. You probably know them. There was someone there two people who supported us in this process to reflect a bit on our own practice and to theorize that a little bit, to try to understand what is this design for policy, and to find an own way to frame it, and that everyone can find themselves in the work that they do, that it's reflected in that frame. So, because right now we are doing all very different things. We are 8 designers, and we're still very busy doing the work, right? So, but then to take actually time to reflect while doing the work, it's quite challenging, but we somehow managed. Okay, so who recognizes this? Okay, you don't see the triangle so well, but the triangle is our, in the Policy Lab identity, we are the triangle. The Foresight team is the square. I know the BI team is the square. The Behavioral Insights team is the square, and the Foresight team is the circle. But so we are the triangle, and who recognizes the beam is from? Famous artist? Pink Floyd, yeah, thanks. So basically, this is based on something that I actually saw in the other conference in Helsinki. There was Ramya presenting an unpublished paper, which actually got published 2 days ago, but so that's not fully correct what's standing there. And Lucy Kimball, who is someone also in London, like theorizing a lot of the design for policy, helped us also with this. So, but we completely remixed and tried to make it our own. So on the left-hand side, we are trying to describe the way we are approached and the amount of space that we receive and the amount of uncertainty that there is in the brief. So it can be that the scope of policymaking is future-oriented or undetermined. It can be that the scope of policymaking is broader, with unclear boundaries, and it can be that the scope of policymaking is very clearly defined. So, and that matters because based on the openness and the stage they are in the policymaking process and the amount of uncertainty and questions they have, that will define how we will respond to that. So we think that design can either be on the very generative level, so not only generate radically new policy ideas and visions and making visions come to life, but also re-envisioning the policymaking process. So really looking at that and trying to improve that. On the other hand, and this is at the moment more of an ambition, we see it as a role to open up policymaking to lived experience. So that's the responsive role. And this is something that we at the moment struggle with. Like it's more of an ambition than a reality. It's to actually make openings for civil society to come into a policymaking process is something we would like to more, but it's not so easy because especially on the EU level, there are several layers. There is the member state level, there's like until the Camden Council. I mean, actually, no, sadly not the Camden Council anymore. But, and then lastly, there is design can also really support on a very, very practical level. So when it comes to implementation, there is, for example, now a project in the lab where they are harmonizing waste labels for 500 million people. So to think of a waste labeling system that works for everyone is a massive implementation journey. Yeah, so that's less, let's say, abstract and generative, but requires a lot of practical planning and people together. But of course, all of those roles can be practiced in one project at the same time. Just as a nuance. So this is also based on a working paper. It's super interesting work that Lucy and Ramya Mazet are producing. So these are on the left-hand side the policy stages that they are called now in the European Commission. So they're quite broad. So everyone understands that the policy cycle is it's like a convenient truth. It's a mental model that helps people to understand policymaking, but in reality, it's much more human and chaotic and diverse. So, but the goals that the policymakers in the Commission have is that they want to either create really unusual policy options they want to assess risk, they want to change or improve the way the policies are made, depending if you're someone working on process. You also want to maybe set your policy priorities, or you want to anticipate how stakeholders might react, so bringing in this lived experience, or it can be really enhance the policy uptake, so that's more this implementation and delivery question. So, and design is basically can support on all of these levels, depending on the request. So, yeah, it can be about bringing future visions to life, which is one of the things, it's, let's say, the most radical thing we do is working with artists to bring certain visions that come out of a foresight process, out of horizon scanning. We have always this knowledge on certain things that are developing, but instead of just having that in a dry report, we are trying to work with artists to make that vision come to life. So we create now we're developing a radio show that's taking place in 2040, and you tune in. I mean, we give that to policymakers. They get like an MP3 player and they can go for a walk for 40 minutes, and then they tune into a radio show that is not explained, and then you have all kinds of programs and people are talking about an event that takes place without describing it. And this event is the Jubilee, which is the forgiveness of all debt. And then you start to hear the stories of how that actually is changing lives, and etc. And then it's our task to afterwards, after this art experience, this inspiration moment, to bring that down to policy, and that's the biggest challenge, of course. Yeah. Voila. I need to hurry now. It's
also about the way
take some time. So there is another thing that this is the dynamic effects of design and policymaking culture. This is something that we figured out, we came up with, and you can let me know if this actually, we haven't presented this to anyone, if this works, but like, instead of presenting design as this thing of like, oh, we want to move the needle from to, we want to go from there to here. I feel, at least in the commission as a designer, like you're constantly swinging between different states, and this oscillation is actually more of a natural thing, and you're swinging between like the very procedural aspects of policymaking and the small kind of moments where you can do an experiment. You're swinging between the conceptual and the concrete, so trying to first have a conceptual, intellectual understanding of something and then making it very tangible, and back and forth. So we found this, instead of having two opposing, let's say, dimensions, we see it more as like also to connect with our colleagues and what they are doing. We work and in the procedural and experimental, we work and conceptual and concrete. Sometimes we work reactively, sometimes we work proactively. So for example, this singular polyphonic is, we see we're kind of swinging in between this thing where people want to just have one idea about something. Let's say if you have a big topic like poverty, that they want to reduce the complexity around, okay, I'm just gonna make a very narrow definition right now of what poverty is in order to continue to work and to figure out what the problems are. And then sometimes we have to open it up again. So if you say, poverty for me it's not having a job. That's my definition of poverty, okay. Sometimes we have to then open it up by introducing different voices and actually adding this complexity, and then back going to a more singular. So that's one movement. Another one is this procedural experimental, because of course the procedural take on things, this approach is very effective in delivering certain things, and sometimes it's not acknowledged, or like we say that experimental innovation is like the way forward. And the same with the conceptual and the concrete. So it's being comfortable in that movement, in going from one to the other and swinging back and forth. I feel that is really, for me, characterizes also, or how I feel as a designer, the movement that I am asked to go through. And the same in our context, the verbal is incredibly strong. This whole commission is built on text. It's just a verbal cognitive beast. So the moment you bring in one diagram, you're the sexiest man in the room. So yeah, but this is really, it's incredible. Like you make a few drawings and they get like sent through, and then suddenly like someone comes to you with they project whatever in that drawing. Then also that's the amazing thing. And the same with the reactive, the proactive. So yeah, sometimes you have to respond fast. Sometimes you have to be able to take the time to actually go through these foresight processes and think proactively about what's coming. And for us, something that's true is within the Joint Research Center, there is this thing of everyone's creating and collecting evidence, but people are actually trying to make this actionable knowledge. And my fellow scientist colleagues, there's discussion because no, all evidence should be actionable. Yeah, but it's just not true. I think some evidence is just there, but it doesn't live. So that's also something that we're trying to figure out. How can you actually bring all this knowledge to life and bring it in the attention of a policymaker, because it's a huge challenge. Yeah, that's it. I think there are some projects, but I think it's fine to stop here.
Give us a 2-minute run-through project, please.
Yeah, I mean, so just one. So this is the Futures Garden where we create the radio show. You can check that work out on futuresgarden.eu. Yeah, we have now, this is the fourth, like we have four speculative artifacts, we call them, and they're all around a certain topic. So one is about coming of age, one is about like, about transition. So this whole radio show shows a community that went through a transition and what that means, and to find new languages, new words around transition. So we use that as to create a very open space, an experimental space that hopefully policymakers then feel that they can approach us, and we can become this bureau for weird ideas and weird concepts, or experimental support. And then we try to find out a way to set up a little experiment with them. So for example, now there is I will host a workshop on like speculative policies for mental health. So there were some people from Santerre were like, we want to work around mental health. And I saw at the Futures Garden, you had like something around that. We have one of the films, Inwards, which shows a future where people are they are mediating their emotions through technology. So it's quite a controversial, provocative film. And this can help actually to start a workshop and thinking about like mental health policy in the future, and how can we create speculative policies already now, quite radically, without like diving deep in data, but just by coming together with a diverse transdisciplinary group of people, and we just, because if we follow the let's say the logical, let's gather all the data and define the gaps and then make a decision, the policy options, they are always very reactionary. So the weird thing about policy is like you create a policy for the future as a reaction to the past, which is a very difficult, like, because it takes 10 years also. So by the time it's there, it's actually already developed, it's somewhere else.
Within the Futures Guide, we building the likes of augmented reality as well, and where it learns in that world and can react to.
Yeah, so we are deliberately choosing quite calm mediums, because it's really about the collective intelligence in the room. So, I mean, or we want to create this kind of collective experience of imagination. I think augmented reality could be interesting maybe at some point.
And react it and see how it all reacts,
Yeah, but at this point it's been more like we've made films. Now we have like, where you find a backpack, you're on a Euro train with a group and you find a backpack, from a lost backpack, and it is full of items. And you figure out who this backpack is from, and it's from like someone who's it's from a future youth. Depends on your character. And there's also an orb in there, which is an AI, and you can talk to, which is this persona. You have all kinds of objects that you can bring close to the orb, and it talks to you, and you can actually have a conversation with a young person from the future. And the goal is they all have their own struggles. in that future. It's a story of coming of age in the future. Yeah, and then the challenge for us is to make that connect to policymaking, and that's our job. So the artists make the thing, and then we have to kind of place it in context. But we're still learning and finding with this. Okay, Sabine, shortly, yeah. Yeah,
It's just such a nice way to describe that.
I have one quick idea or observation. So the way we are taking care of the multitude of emotions and resistance that policymakers might feel when they go through such an experience is that we let the group take care of itself. So the collective sense making is the most important. So this is not just an individual art experience. It's a collective experience to imagine. So all of the people that go through this resistance and they come into a group, we put them in a group just to share what they're feeling, and they come across someone that is more open to the experience, they will adjust what they feel, and somehow they come out of it feeling, in the end, other people seem to find this very meaningful, and they adjust accordingly. So thank you very much. Thank you, Luca.